Ephesians 4, chapter 11 to 13. It says, it was he, Christ, and you can just listen to me hopefully if you don't have your Bible with you, but it was he, and talking about Christ, who gave some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors and teachers, to prepare God's people for works of service, so that the body of Christ may be built up, until we all reach unity in the faith and in the knowledge of the Son of God, and become mature, attaining to the whole measure of the fullness of Christ. What we see here with the term gave some to be, that implies an aspect of your purpose, a role that one plays. And in some way, we've all been exposed in this church to the fivefold ministry, what we call the fivefold ministry: apostles, prophets, teachers, evangelists, pastors. We all have a role to play in showcasing the glory of God in the earth. And you'll see that in Ephesians 4, but then there's 1 Corinthians 12, verses 28 to 30, that also talks about some roles, because the word God's appointed some to be. And you recognize that some people have been hearing about different types of gifts. There's a difference between a gift that you have, and we've heard Adam say that, and a role that you play. So 1 Corinthians 12, 28 to 30 actually starts to tell us a little bit more about the roles. And we see some overlap between this Ephesians 4, with some to be apostles, some to be prophets, some to be evangelists, some to be pastors, some to be teachers. And we see an overlap with 1 Corinthians 12, 28 to 30. But even though there's an overlap, there are some other roles that are identified, and we tend to focus on the fivefold, what we call the fivefold, which are these on the PowerPoint. And the reason we tend to do that is because we call them governance structure for the church, okay? So their purpose is twofold: to prepare God's people for the works of service, and so that the body of Christ might be built up. Now, does that mean that everybody's called to one of these fivefold roles? And the answer to that is simply no, because not everybody's called to the governance structure of the church. But they are used to prepare the rest of the body for works of service. So, if you realize that your role is not one of them, then what is the point? Why do you have to keep hearing about it? One, we're all have an assignment in this earth. So we all need to know, who do you go to? You don't need to go to a pastor when you actually need to speak to an apostle for certain things, depending on your assignment. There's no need talking to an evangelist when you need to be talking to a prophet. So you need to know who to go to for your specific assignment if you need help with those areas. But you also need to know your role too. So if you don't fit in the Ephesians 4, 11 to 13 roles, then you can switch over to 1 Corinthians 12. 28 to 30 and see that you might actually have a role there. Okay? Now, one of the things that I found interesting is that it says apostles, prophets, this is S now, evangelists, pastors, teachers. And what we tend to think of is that we've got one of each of them. Now, you may have one in the church, but you might be surprised that we have more than one apostle in this church. Now, for leadership purposes, you've got to have somebody who's the presiding, because in any organization, you've got to have somebody who's in charge. But there may be other people who are called to be apostles who are here, and they might be sitting amongst us, and we don't even realize it yet. There might be prophets among us. There might be pastors among us who are not called pastor. They don't carry the title, but they carry the role, because it's God that's called them. Christ called them. If you look in Ephesians 4, and you look in 1 Corinthians 12, you realize both times it's Christ that made the appointments. So sometimes we have titles that man has given us, but it's not necessarily that God's given us those titles. And sometimes we don't have a title, because man hasn't given it to us. But it doesn't mean that God hasn't given it to us. Okay? So, understanding those roles are really important. Another thing that I want to talk to you quickly about roles is that, one of the things that I found interesting, sometimes when somebody sees leadership on you, they see an anointing, but we're all anointed, eh? But they see leadership on you, meaning they see some kind of, probably they might see governance leadership on you. But their church positions, and I know because maybe we recorded this, so other people might from another church might get a little enlightenment, so that works. Because they see that leadership anointing on you, and there are only certain roles that they have to fill, they try to pigeonhole you into a role that God has not designed you for and He's not equipped you to fulfill. And so you're filling a role, and you're frustrated, and the other people are wondering, what in the world are you doing? That's not how an evangelist operates. That's not how a pastor is supposed to operate. And probably because they are not pastor. They are not evangelists. But they're fitting into a role or fitting into a title because that's what's available. And the other thing I want you to think of when you're thinking of your roles is this. You know, a lot of times we tend to, and I'm saying it generally, but we tend to like things related to status. So we pursue roles or we pursue titles because we may know that we have a call on us. The truth is we all have a call on us. Get over that, okay? But if you are seeking after a role, a position that God's not equipped you to, you're actually asking Him to change His design of you to fit to your own personal preference, your own personal ambition. And that's not what we're about. So if you want to be thinking of showcasing the glory of God in the earth, you need to be saying, God, what is it that you have set me up to do? And that's going to be showing up in a lot of things. That's going to show up in your personality. That's going to show up in the things that make you tick. Because God's designed you a certain way from before the foundation of the world.